Hi, and welcome to Conductor, where we are two sisters on a mission to amplify women's voices on the podium.
Join us as we interview leaders in the field of choral music, share resources, and build a community for current and future teacher conductors, all while exploring the gender divide. I'm Kira Starr.
And I'm McKenna Stenson, and we are
Conductor. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conductor. We are so excited to have Jess Edelbrock and Marcela Molina on the podcast with us today. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
We're really excited. Kira and I were just talking to both Jess and Marcela to say they're the first duet that we've had on the podcast, and we're just so thrilled that they both said yes to speak with us today. And we wanted to give a little bit about both of their professional backgrounds. So to begin, Jess Edelbrock is the Director of Operations at the Tucson Girls Chorus. We'll call that TGC as we go forward from here. She also directs the TGC Bumblebees, which are grades kindergarten and first, Mariposa Singers, 6th through 8th grade, and Pop Acapella Group, which is high school 9 through 12. Jess earned a BM in choral education from Northern Arizona University in 2013 and an MM in choral conducting from Michigan State University in 2018, where I had the pleasure of being a part of the cohort with Jess, which was so awesome. She has experience teaching in many grade levels and musical subjects and believes that all students deserve access to the many benefits of singing together. She has served on numerous boards in the Arizona choral scene and presented several sessions at state conferences. In January 2022, the TGC Bumblebees performed at the ACDA National Children's and Youth Community Choir Conductors Retreat, and I had the pleasure of seeing this live, and it was maybe the cutest thing I've ever seen in my whole life, and so artistically done. She enjoys spending time with her wonderful husband, 2 children, 2 dogs, and a lot of plants.
Dr. Marcela Molina has been affiliated with the Tucson Girls Chorus since 2006, first serving as artistic director and taking the helm as executive director in 2011. Under Dr. Molina's guidance, TGC has grown significantly in performing and community engagement. With her leadership, the TGC has transformed into a vibrant and collaborative organization that creates access to inclusive programming for youth and provides resources to music educators and support to their classrooms all year round. In addition to her work with the TGC, Dr. Molina also serves as the director of the Tucson Symphony Orchestra Chorus. Born in Bogota, Colombia, Dr. Marcela Molina holds degrees from Westminster Choir College and the University of Arizona. She was named 2019 Choral Director of the Year by Arizona American Choral Directors Association, and she often serves as a clinician and guest conductor for choral festivals. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we are so excited to dive in and to give our audience members just a little bit more background about you. We'd love to dive into both of your upbringings and to hear about how you have journeyed to choral music. So this is a question for both of you, and you can toss it back and forth. But would you just give us a bit about your upbringing and how you came to choral music specifically?
Sure, I can start. So I have been singing since I can remember, since I was little. I remember my mom has told me that I would sing to the Little Mermaid soundtrack in the car. And I got to sing in choir my whole school experience. So I've kind of always been a choir nerd, and it was never a thing to not sing for me. So part of why I do what I do is because it affected me so much to be part of a program in a public school all the way K through 12. I want to make sure that there's access for everyone all the way through, whether that's through community choir or through public schools. So I've just sung my whole life, and I've been in choir my whole life.
I had more of a, I will say, an orthodox training, or it wasn't even training. We really, I grew up in Bogota, and my school wasn't particularly, musical in the way that it is here in the U.S., with so many resources and just like a big emphasis on choral singing per se. I would say that we had more emphasis on just like really folklore, like typical Colombian music, and it's really based on movement, on dance. So it wasn't, singing wasn't necessarily part of it. But I remember my parents, who are not musicians, they used to have parties in our house growing up, and there was always music around, but in a very informal, just joyous type of experience. And there was a friend of my mom's who always had a guitar, and she just will just sing, it was sing Colombian music or protest songs from, South America, or whatever it was. And I was just like being mesmerized by her, and I think that's when the love of music, I think I identified that as a little girl, that I just really wanted it. And I remember asking my parents for a guitar, and it was just so foreign to them. And they were like, what do we do with this child? So they didn't really pay attention to that until I was like 15. And I kept, I think, showing interest in that. And at that point, one of the local universities where my mom graduated from, it was opening a young artist program. And then she said, like, do you want to try to do that? So I started pretty late, and then it was choir for the first time, was choir in that program. That's the first experience I had as a teenager. And of course, I was just blown away by the profound feeling that it was to just sing surrounded by people, and that like goosebumps that you get when you hit that one chord that you just don't understand what is that is just beyond you. And so that was where my first training started. So very different from Jess in that way, but I think coming from the same place of just an innate interest for the music making.
I love that answer so much. I love the encapsulation of singing in that beyond you statement. That is so powerful. And I feel like that is what draws so many of us to choral music, to conducting, and to leading, because we want to share that feeling with other people. And it's so gratifying when it happens. I just had it today when I was singing, and I was like, oh, love to sing. So great. So our second question for both of you is, what event or events were inspirational for you to choose choral music as your career specifically?
This one popped into my head immediately. So when I was in high school, I was the choir kid. Like I think many of us have been and were, and we have many of those in our own programs. And my program at my high school was a show choir program primarily. So I was in show choir, and that was just what we sang, lots of pop music, and which I loved, and we were dancing. It was really fun. And then I made it into regionals in my freshman year, and I went and sang this music that I had never sung before, and with people who also loved it, and the director loved it, and it was just this, oh, this is a thing. And it was the first time that I had seen, like, this isn't just that I like to sing. This is a thing that people do, and something that I could do. And I knew right after that regional, so I was like, I want to do this all the time. So that was in a moment. I knew I wanted to make sure I was either singing all the time, or I know the next question is coming, so I'll talk about like how I knew I wanted to teach eventually. So
for me, I think it was started with, that party on my mom's house, on my parents' house, where there was alcohol and I shouldn't have been there, but what you're asking is what inspirational thing. When we got into that young artist program, and I was just singing there for the first time, that was just very transformative. But I remember right before or at the beginning of college, my first my instrument was classical guitar. So there was just no, in my mind at that point, I could never imagine myself being in front of people in a rehearsal setting. That was, it was not even part of something I could ever imagine, because I was already coming with a sense of insecurity that I didn't study when I was younger. I didn't have piano lessons when I was younger. I didn't have all of those things that a lot of people come with when they are entering the music career. So it was foreign to me. So I felt very out of. I've always felt like I've been playing catch up, because I haven't had that training since I was a little girl. But I remember listening to one of my friends had put Mozart's Requiem in her house. He just played it. And I remember being like, what is that? Like it was just so beautiful and just incredible. And she was a terrific musician. She was a pianist, and she was just singing the alto line, then she would pop to the soprano line, and she was just like singing everything. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you're incredible. And I think that with the the informal experience that I had with just people singing Colombian music or music that wasn't necessarily choral music really influenced what I can do, what I'm doing right now.
I love that there was that through line for both of you, that pop or folk music was inspirational for you to get to this point. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget in our field, and is so important to remind us that we need to do music that our students like and hear and listen to. And even if it's just a fun warm up where you're moving to a song that you heard on a radio, like that is so powerful for them, and that makes them love you 10 times over. I mean, it's just so, it will never fail. So I love that you both had something to say about connecting to music that people just listen to for fun, recreationally.
Yep.
And now a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
This season, we are featuring a fierce lineup of women composers found in the Music Spoke marketplace. At Music Spoke, composers receive the majority of the proceeds from sales, retain control over their own works, and all scores are available immediately as digital downloads. At Music Spoke, they do not simply publish pieces of music. They find composers and give them the tools and freedom to promote themselves.
You just heard Tout de Travers by Marie-Claire Sandon. Check out her works today on musicspoke.com and conducther.com/sponsors.
Hey everyone, Gloria here from Call Time Clothing, back again to remind you to check out our newest special edition items from our collaboration with Conductor. Grab a super soft tee for yourself, a family member, a teacher, or maybe all of the above. We've truly got something for everyone. Head over to Call Time Clothing today.
And we're back.
Both of you also have a really nice way of always bringing it back to sort of the community-oriented aspect. And I think that's something that's so beautiful specifically about you both and TGC. So I'm excited to hear more about that as we dive in. But one last question about your backgrounds. Who or what was helpful and influential in your journey to this point? And I know that's sort of a massive question, but if you could distill that down, what would you say?
This came to me quickly as well. So there's two people who have been very influential in different stages. So one is Dr. Betsy Schauer, and she is the DCA at U of A, the University of Arizona right now. And I went to school in Tucson, so I have been here since I was 8. So I basically grew up here. And my second year in regionals, my sophomore year, she was newish at U of A, and she was the conductor, and she was the first woman conductor that I had. So I was like, yeah, I can do this too. So, and I got to tell her as a colleague a few years ago that, and it was just such a surreal moment of like, years ago, you showed me just by being you that this is possible, and now we're colleagues. It was very odd moment for me in a very cool way. And the other person who has been super instrumental is Marcela, of course. So she has been a mentor for me in more ways than we can count. And I mean, I will be surprised if we don't end up tearing up at some point during this podcast. Every time we have a staff review together, it's like, we love each other so much. And I just respect her so much for so many reasons. And a lot of it has to do with the teamwork atmosphere that she brings to TGC, and how it's just so apparent that our successes are not a failure on another person, and so we just lift each other up. And just seeing what she does with TGC and the way that she talks about TGC is that we are doing this, even though she is the one at the helm, it's just, she is endlessly inspirational to me, and she knows that, but I'll just keep saying it. So.
Already crying, so it's going to be good over here. Tearing up.
I already have the Kleenex right here, like ready to go. It's like we're pathetic. But well, I think for me, I had, when I started considering, I was still in Colombia, doing choral conducting. I loved it so much, but I was just so afraid of it. And I remember one of my friends at that point, who is now like a very well-known orchestral conductor, I told him, look, I just would love to conduct choirs. I just love choirs so much. And he was like, why don't you? He was already like on his path to like going to Austria to conduct, he was a great violinist. And I said, well, could never do it, and he was like, why not? Like, I just remember us like sitting on stairs, like he telling me like, why not? Why can't you do it? And he was just like, yeah, why not? I guess I was not going to be limited by my fear, So at that point, I just jumped into give it a shot, and I started conducting stuff in Colombia with friends, just like putting myself out there and just like face the fear right on. But I have always, and since then, I have always been really interested in people and interested in learning from people. So at every juncture of my career, I have been open to whatever is it that I need to learn. And it has been tremendously impactful for me to work with Jess. Like I learn from her all the time. So I could have an idea and she makes it 10 times better. It's just, it always happens. And so I am still very influenced on a daily basis by the people that I get to work with. And for me, she is just a tremendous example of inspiration and integrity and brilliantness. And I always tell her how amazing she is. And I mean it all the time to a point where I'm nauseating and I'm like, Jessica, I cannot live without you. And make her promise me that she will never leave me is like so horrible. So the point is that I am always at every juncture really open and thirsty of being of learning, always of learning something new, and of being elevated, of my experience being elevated and elevate somebody else's experience by curiosity, by just the curiosity of working with that person. And Jess is my person right now. I mean, more than anybody probably.
Well, I knew from the minute that we started the podcast, 3 years ago, I told Kira, I was like, when the time is right, we have to have Jess and Marcela on the podcast, because this dream team of women leadership, like, we have to hear from them, because they are so wonderful at empowering each other and lifting each other up and hearing what each other has to say and advocating and sharpening. And it's like sponges for each other, but then also sieves so that you can work through the ideas. And I'm going to tell you that because you all just said it. And I also think both of you talking about the the partnership that you have, not being limited by fear, and by diving in and always having that curiosity. I think that's something that's really special, and we're excited to tap into. So I don't know if everybody picked up from the bios here today, but Jess is the director of operations for TGC, and Marcela is the artistic and executive director, which leads us to a really fantastic women-run team here. And I know you have a larger team; it's not just the two of you. But Kira and I were wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you both came to the Tucson Girls Chorus and how you've seen the organization change over time, but since you both arrived and under your leadership.
Mm-hmm. So I was finishing I had just finished my coursework for my doctorate, and I was pregnant with my first baby. I was about to give birth, and my professor at the time said, the girls' chorus needs somebody for part-time. Do you want to take it? Do you want me to give you your name? And I said, no, I don't. I really don't. I'm good. And I said, I just don't want to teach more kids. I'm done with children, even though I'm pregnant. And then he was like, I think you should just do it. Just do it for a year while you write your paper. And I said, fine. So I went to that meeting, what it felt like 11 months pregnant. And I said, I'll do it for a year. And they said, okay, fine. So, and it's been 17. So, I started as a part-time artistic director. The following year, I was a full-time artistic director. And a few years later, then I became this dual role that I'm in. TGC has been transformed, tremendously since I started. When I started, the founder has just left, and there was a year of an interim who was not a good fit for each other. And so I came in with a very low morale of the organization, identity crisis of the organization, and also just like they were just leaving the organization. We had like 67 kids. We have a very well-known boys chorus here in town that has a long tradition. So then I really didn't know what I was doing. I'm coming out of a doctoral program. No offense, we don't know anything. We come out with a lot of book knowledge, and real life stuff is just not there yet. So I came out with very little knowledge of nonprofit. I didn't know anything about nonprofit and entrepreneurship. None of that was obviously cultivated in the doctoral program. So I was, again, like a sponge to just learn what was going on and try to take it. And I remember one of my colleagues at that point, she was a doctoral program. She's actually runs another Princeton Girl Choir, Linnell Jenkins. I'm an amazing educator. She told me, there is good treble music. And I was like, really? Because I was just so like, what am I going to do? And she's like, there is really good treble music, Marcela. Music is music. You just gotta look for it, and you're going to find it. So I started to also growing into who I was and as a conductor and as an educator, and starting to take risks in terms of what kind of programming I wanted to be able to present. So my first year, I was just trying to just get my bearings and to kind of understanding what I was doing. But by the second year, I started feeling like, okay, I can think a little beyond this and that. And then I think has been a process of that every single year. It's just like, what can we do to elevate the field? And also to make sure that, I constantly keep looking at the mission statement and said, how is this relevant to what I'm doing? And what has really resonated with me as I have learned this is just like, for me, community is extremely important, and creating access has been really a mission of mine that I just didn't know I had until I got into this job. I think it has always been there, but I just never had the platform to do it. So the how TGC has transformed is by me surrounding myself with people that are better than I am. and that can complement everything that I do. So I have an idea, and like I said, Jess comes in and she's just like, we're gonna just make it a million times better. And we have now a team that is cohesive and that we like seeing each other shine. And I think what my job has been as a leader of the organization is just, I love to stand in the back and just get them fly. That is my favorite thing to do. So it has transformed in the vibrant organization that is in right now, that has 21 programs, and we are serving babies through high school, and we are doing a lot of community work, and we have a big vision, but it is because the team that is doing it is cohesive, and we are role models. We are modeling what we are asking our singers to be and to do, to work with each other and be good listeners, know when to lead and when to support, and how to and make sure that we're champions for each other.
Wow. Just put that all. I mean, I want that written down and sent to like every organization possible that I just love, you've mentioned this a few times, Marcela, already, but I love how open you are about saying, I don't know everything, and that is so human, and we need to find people who are going to help us discover new things and think about what we are doing in a unique and new perspective. And that is something that can be so hard. And I think as musicians, we're trained a lot of the time to strive for quote unquote perfection. And then that can make it really hard when you are in a setting where you're like, oh, actually, I don't know what I'm doing. And I've never run a nonprofit before.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything that you said about school is so true. We train, music theory and skills and all of these important, but very in the box things. And then we get into the world and we're like, what? How do I order uniforms? I mean, there's just like, there's these basic things that no one teaches you. And suddenly you are in charge and you have this moment of looking around like, what do I do? And I have 9 singers in front of me. There's just a lot of what you said that I think everyone in this field can relate to. And I appreciate you just coming at us with all this vulnerability and honesty.
I just wanted to dovetail and make sure Jess got to speak just a little bit about this, because I remember watching Jess in the summers when we would go to our masters transition from being part-time with TGC to becoming full-time. And I just remember from the moment I met you, Jess, you were like, there's this woman, Marcela, who I get to work with at TGC, and I love her. And like, this organization is doing amazing things. And I just am like on fire to go to work every day to be a part of this organization. And I knew what you were bringing because you're my wonderful friend and colleague. And I learned from you every day at graduate school. And so I just didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to add to that.
Sure. And I think part of it is like an encouragement to people who might be thinking about going into community choirs or really any kind of shift in their career or vision. So I started off at my first year teaching was in downtown Phoenix at a high school. And my idea for my life was that I was going to teach at the best high school in Arizona and eventually probably at a university. So because that is what I envisioned all through my undergrad. And there are people who do that and are wonderful at it. So that's great. And then my now husband, who is also a teacher, he's a middle school band teacher, and he was teaching in Tucson, which is where I am from. And so there was a point where I was like, am I going to stay in Phoenix and teach here? Or is he going to come up here? Am I going to go down there? And I felt the pull to come back home basically and get married. And I ended up, the job that I got when I moved down here was a K-5 general music position, which taught me more about teaching than anything ever has. The bumblebees also teach me more than I can explain. So I taught there for a couple years, and I got involved with TGC as an accompanist first for the elementary choirs. And then as I helped with the summer camp. And then one summer, Marcela called me and was like, there's an opening for a to conduct our middle school ensemble. Would you like it? And I was like, what? Me? What? This can't be. But all throughout that process there of working in these small ways with TGC, like there was just something that just drew me to the organization, and like, this is the real deal. Part of it was how stunning her girls sound. Just like, that was certainly part of it. It was like, oh my gosh, this is next level. They sound amazing. And then I got deeper into the inner parts of the organization and just saw how I just wanted to be around Marcela and learn from her. So eventually I remembered meeting with her, and I sat down and I was like, I want to be.
No, hold on.
Okay.
She said, I was complaining. I was like, I hate doing this type of thing. It was something about like calendar,
Something very minutia.
like minutia, because before she was here and before we had this big team that we have now, I was doing a lot more of like the details, and I was like, oh, I just have to do all of this minutia. I just hate it. And she was like,
I can do that.
if you ever need somebody. And I was like, okay, let me do something. So
yeah, so I asked, and I saw where where maybe there was a hole that I could help with, and I knew I wanted to be there eventually. So I just asked, and she could have said no. What she said was not yet. She said like, okay, let's see. And then I was 10 hours a week for a little bit, and then I was 20 hours, and then I was 30 hours, and then I was full-time. And I think this is year 3 or 4 of full-time. So, and now when I was full-time, I was community engagement director, running our Title I school programs and partnerships. And now we have a fantastic person in that role, and I'm director of operations. So like, I started as a pianist, and here we are. So, and a lot of that is just because I put myself out there and I asked. Yeah. So, if any of you are waiting for a moment to do that, like, do it.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
Pavon Publishing is proud to feature outstanding women composers and conductors. Composer Judith Harrington has created a prolific choral series for youth and treble choirs that includes Fireflies from Japan and Duérmete mi corazón from Brazil. Shirley McRae has many outstanding arrangements for young choirs, including popular songs like Black Sheep, and Sakura. Conductor Iris Levine maintains a treble chorus series of medium to advanced works, with text by poets from Teasdale to Yeats. Other composers and authors in the Pavon family circle include Zenaida Stewart-Robles, Catherine Rundis, and Martha Wall. Explore all of these fantastic composers at Pavon Publishing. And we're back.
The worst thing you can hear is no, and then you just keep going. So.
That is so, that's something that when Kira and I present about Conductor, that's sort of a through line that we want to help cultivate within our community of women conductors and supporting the other communities that exist beyond women, right? But just to ask and to be brave enough and bold enough to advocate. And like you said, what's the worst you can hear? No. Or maybe you get that not yet. And you're like, but that doesn't mean no. That means there's potential here, which is really exciting. So thanks for sharing that part of your journey, Jess.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I love too that both of you have said this was not like a straight and narrow path that I was supposed to end up here. I didn't foresee this as my life. And there's something so powerful about that, and powerful about your vision can change, and it's okay. And it doesn't mean that whatever you had been striving for is irrelevant. You can take things, and every experience and every opportunity that comes along in your path, there's a way to combine it, and there's a way to look forward and say, great, I've got all these tools in my tool bag now, and I'm hopping on this train, and this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I think as we look forward into the future, we continue to see more and more musicians who are like, hey, I do actually all of these other things, and I'm with you, Jess. I'm very type A, and I'm great at a calendar. So like I feel it's important to capitalize on those skills and say, hello, are you looking for somebody to organize your life and give you a desktop on your computer that's beautiful? It's me. Like, I'm here.
For the past 5 years, Kira has designed. I'm like, hey, I need my brain. And I'm organized, but she's organized in a way that I can't quite comprehend. And it's beautiful.
And every time I see her, she's like, don't look at my desktop. I'm sorry. But we need that reminder sometimes that we are all unique, and the way that we travel through our lives and the skills that we have are assets to other people, and they shouldn't be exactly the same. And I think you both have touched on that. Like, you use each other to make each other better. And that's what this is all about. And I think it can be difficult in organizations that do have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Even if there is one person who is, the leader in this particular way, I think it can be really hard for people to find the balance of autonomy and also rapport that comes in that environment. And I know, like, I've worked in a children's choir organization before, and it's been difficult because you're maybe the leader of this particular ensemble, but then you're not the leader of the full organization. And I think it takes a really, really excellent leader to be able to develop those people and assist them. And as you said, Marcela, stand in the back because that's your favorite part. Like, there's a lot of trust that comes with that. We were wondering if you all could talk a little bit about how to develop that culture within an organization, and maybe speak to some of the people who might be working in those environments right now and aren't feeling that collaboration. Maybe what advice do you have for people who are struggling with that?
I find it difficult because it really depends. The leader of the organization sets the tone, right? For me, it has been always easier, I guess, for me to recognize where my limitations are. I mean, I fake my way through things like we all do. But I know what my limitations are, and I'm not afraid to talk about them, or to talk about where my mistakes have been in other attempts to create programming or this or that, or even the identity crisis that I've had. I don't have it anymore, but at the beginning of my career, pursuing a doctorate degree and then working at a community organization. Am I doing what I need to do? What am I doing? I went to school to all of this, and then feeling like, oh, people are not gonna, or my professor is just thinking like, what are you doing here? You could do so much better, than what I was doing at the time. And so all that identity crisis and all of that, I think has helped me to just like keep myself with my feet on the ground and being able to know that this is what I can do and this is what I'm not really good at that. But and I think you attract then the people that you need, and then if you are able to recognize that and open the space for that, it is just, I just try to duplicate what I do in the rehearsal space in the workplace. So I am not a top-down type of conductor. I've never been, maybe when I was younger, because I just needed to assert myself or whatever, your insecurities that come through being a young conductor. But I just duplicate the same thing. I'm just a creative facilitator, and the same thing happen in the workplace. It's just surrounding myself and giving the space to the people to contribute in with what their strengths are, and create an environment. It just comes easier when you recognize who you are as a person. And if this is what I am good at, I am good with this, and this is what I perhaps will need help or need somebody to compliment me, and then recognize that is what this person is bringing, and leave the space for that person to do that, without micromanaging, and just trusting the process.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
Hello, everyone. Jocelyn Hagan here. I just wanted to let you know that the Compose Like a Girl podcast has officially launched. Listen as I interview celebrated composers Sarah Kirkland Snyder, Chen Yi, Dale Trombor, Angelica Negron, Rina Esmail, and more. I'm also hard at work on the next batch of scores in the Compose Like a Girl choral series, distributed by Graphite Publishing. You can help me bring these new pieces to life. I'm always seeking choral ambassadors to perform these new works by emerging composers. If you're interested, please reach out to me, Jocelyn Hagan, via my website, jocelynhagan.com, or social media. I look forward to hearing from you.
Hello, this is Sandra Snow, Director of Choral Programs at Michigan State University and Artistic Director of Mirabai. Mirabai is partnering with the Denver Women's Chorus to present Storytellers, a workshop unlike any conference you've been to. For the first time, leaders in choral music education will partner with members of GALA, the Gay and Lesbian Association of Choruses, to bring a workshop that blends the experiences of musical activists and classroom trailblazers. The Storytellers Conference is designed to improve your rehearsal and ensemble leadership through sessions that promote inclusive pedagogy, cultural responsiveness, and a new lens through which to view the conductor's role. Featured guests will include composer and singer Moira Smiley, and all attendees will be able to see Mirabai in concert. Session presenters will include collegiate educators from across the country and gala chorus leaders who are working as community activists. When we come together to listen to one another's stories, we all grow. Storytellers, listen, connect, expand. To register, see storytellersdenver.org.
And we're back.
And what I've noticed, in my years working with Marcela, and that I've been lucky to be able to kind of absorb a little bit, is as she's talking about the trust, like she asks more questions than she speaks to. Like she's a very active listener, and I know that's a big part of our organization as well when we go into new partnerships. Rather than saying, well, this is what we have for you, so here you go. It's very much more like, this is what we're thinking, this is what has worked, but what do you need? And when obviously someone has to make the decision with big and little things, but when she makes the decision, it comes from a mission-based, like that kind of perspective, rather than an I'm in charge, this is what I'm saying. It doesn't come from ego, it comes from a mission. For like, it's all about the girls and how can we make this better for the girls. And even down to the little things, like the staff chooses their rep. Marcela has never said, like, this is what we're doing. It's very much like, I trust you. I hired you because I trust you. And if we run into issues, then we'll have a conversation. But so I think the staff feels a lot of autonomy and feels that we really are lifting each other up. Like we've talked about before, like it's lived out each day. That we trust the staff to make their ensembles the very best they are and to make the programs the very best they can be. So it's a mutual trust.
Yeah, and like we are open to be wrong. So like many times the staff has told me like, no, that is no, we're not doing that right now. Which and I just take it, okay, I because I just have huge respect for them. So and I feel like that is the same with when I have an idea that they are really, really open to considering it, the idea, and their job is to poke the idea to see where we can elevate it or where we need to table it. But none of us have an issue saying that was a freaking terrible idea. That was a terrible idea. So I think, again, just modeling what you want from the people that you are surrounding yourself. I model huge respect for them because I do respect them. And I model curiosity because I am interested in them. And I model support because I just want to support them so much, because just to begin with, I have huge respect for them, and they inspire me every single day.
I think the way that you two talk about your organization is what I hope others can see in the world beyond TGC. And I know that in my journey as a choral director, I have seen a complete spectrum of different approaches to leadership, and different approaches to being a part of a team. And I think the way that both of you spoke about thinking about the way that you facilitate a rehearsal, right? Rather than the maestro effect being the top down, I'm the decision maker, I am the one that chooses all of the things, that instead reflecting with curiosity, opening the floor, asking more questions, making less statements, and really cultivating a community. I think that if we could all think about our own leadership activities, maybe more in the way that we would approach a rehearsal, that our choral community may have more open spaces sooner rather than later. So I think new choral constitution is in the works from Jess and Marcela. And speaking of teams, I know that, and I don't know this, but maybe you have experienced women-led teams that maybe did not work out so well. And I think that sometimes in our field, women can approach the workplace with maybe a scarcity mindset. Sometimes there are so few people that we're seeing in these positions of leadership that it can turn into more of a competitive sense, or that we're not wanting to come to the drawing board together. And again, I don't necessarily believe that's all based in gender, but because we're a women supportive podcast, I wonder what advice you might have to women-based teams, or someone who might be in a situation where the leadership is not looking like you and Jess are, and ideas maybe to help that move into a healthier space.
I think part of it is approaching any relationship with just what we've been talking about, curiosity, not only for this person as the leader, the woman conductor, or whatever, but just as a human being. And I mean, Marcia and I also have this dynamic where we are also very good friends, as you can probably tell, and which has developed. So, and we just happen to really click.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case where you're going to naturally click with somebody. But even so, I've worked with people here, some staff members who I do not naturally click with as much as Marcela, but still, like, they are interesting as people, and we surround ourselves with, I mean, people are inherently good, right? And they're people, anything that comes from that scarcity mindset ultimately may come from some kind of insecurity. So just potentially talking to somebody and maybe getting even to the bottom of it with somebody eventually, and just recognizing that being vulnerable can help us work together, and we have this common goal. So let's think about the mission of, and for example, for TGC, we have this common goal, which is to serve the girls. So how can we do that, whether we're best friends or not? So that may not work for everybody, but maybe that resonated with somebody.
Yeah, I think also like not being afraid to fail. I think some of the things that we have always tried to do here is to do really small risks, even in times of challenge, and just see how will risk look like. And but then like just really put ourselves out there with courage, and being like, okay, well, that didn't work, let's just try again. And not being afraid of recognizing that we made a mistake. Like, we are not afraid of taking a moment to reflect. And I will be the first one to be like, that was just not okay, we just didn't do it in the way that we should have done it, including myself. I mean, I'm the first one to say that was just not, I bulldozed my way through that conversation, I was not a good listener, like stuff like that. If you have the time to really reflect and being able to put it out there and say like, okay, this is where I was not a good leader, or a good example. I always, and I think I know Jess does that too. Like, the first thing when something doesn't work, our first reaction, we really fight that we're going to blame whomever is in front of us, right? Actually, this is the first reaction, being very reactive of when something doesn't work. We are like, well, who did it, I think the first thing that we try to do, and I think I would say that this is very much an institutional culture that we have developed here, is like, what is it that I did? Let's just step back, and what did I do to contribute to this? If it really wasn't, you had nothing to do with it, and it was circumstances or whatever, then that's what it is. But if you could have, done X, Y, and Z, and that maybe would have turned the outcome in a little bit differently, then we are very open, and we create a space for us to be able to verbalize that and be like, it's okay. Like, you're not going to get fired because like we all do this thing. So I think that has been key for us.
Yeah, a lot of what Marcela has modeled is, I mean, we all get annoyed sometimes when people make mistakes of, like, oh my God, how did that happen? But it's always, the end result is always a perspective of, okay, how are we going to move forward? We can't change what happened. Let's move forward, and let's just make some steps to make sure that we try to avoid this again. And she demonstrates that, which makes me want to demonstrate it to the people who I am in charge of, so I think having, instead of exactly what she was saying, instead of the blaming, just like, let's just think about this and take that emotional part away from it.
And not being afraid to have fierce conversations. Sometimes it's really difficult to have hard conversations about, like, I don't think that this was right, and sometimes, and Jess and I, we both have struggled with in our own leadership journey to confront and be like, like, because she's a rock star, and she is the boss of people that are older than her with a ton more experience. At the beginning, I know she was like, oh my gosh, like, how do I tell this staff member that, and I'm like, you just go and say it. And one of our team members now, the thing that they keep telling us is clear is kind. And we just keep saying that clear is kind. And the other thing that we keep saying is, like, we can do hard things. So those are two mantras lately, is clear is kind, and we can do hard things. So having those fierce conversations, because hopefully the end result, there is clarity, and then everyone knows where they stand in the dynamic of that particular relationship.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Everything that you just said is so poignant. And the first thing that I thought of immediately was, you both have talked about how important it is to not get activated and react in that moment with how you maybe want to. And that is so not human. Like, I think biologically, our reaction is to be like, what is going on? You truly have to reprogram your brain and be like, nope, we're not going to like fall into that little sinkhole and go down that road. We need to actually stop. And that's something that I struggle with so much. And I have to constantly remind myself every single day of just breathe and maybe take 24 hours and like actually think it over and determine the best route. Because I have to tell you, it feels so unnatural, but I think it is like the key to leading a team and to just being a good colleague and a good person. And then two other things that you said, the clear is kind, that just struck a chord with me, because I have worked with people who just struggle to say what they mean. And there is nothing more frustrating, especially if you are in the role of the person who is not in charge of the organization, who's just trying to figure out what this person wants or what the vision is.
Right.
And it is infuriating because you're like,
much harder.
Yes.
Exactly. They want to do their job. And they want to do it well. So I would just say to everybody out there, please be more direct with kindness and know that that's going to be more effective than trying to kind of skirt your way around it or asking them questions that aren't direct to try and get them to go where you want. It's so much more effective to just say it.
Hey Connector fans, this is a 2-part episode. Stay tuned, part 2 coming soon. Thank you for listening. This has been Conductor.
This episode was engineered and mixed by Mary Hannah Klontz, with intro and outro music by Jonathan Martin and ad music by Kate Krellin.
Discover more resources at conducther.com.